Hey guys, my name is Shai and this is Evermind Astro. Today I want to talk about Jupiter in Gemini, okay? And this might also resonate if you have natal Jupiter in the third house. And of course, something a little special here, I am recording this in May of 2024, right before the transiting Jupiter is moving into Gemini, right? So that means if you're watching this anytime in 2024 after I post this, after the first couple weeks, I'll put the exact date of Jupiter moving into Gemini down in the box. Or if you're watching it in the first half of 2025, Jupiter is transiting through Gemini. So we're all going to be kind of feeling this vibe a little bit in the background, right? This is a pretty significant vibe for the moment. So Jupiter in Gemini, this is interesting because this is actually Jupiter in exile, right? Jupiter, home sign of Sagittarius. Yeah, there's also Jupiter, the traditional ruler of Pisces, but when I think Jupiter, I primarily think Sagittarius, right? Although the Pisces thing, yes, that is definitely there. That is kind of the softer side of Jupiter, but we're going to talk about that some other video when we get there, right? For now, what's most relevant is Jupiter rules Sagittarius, that's its home sign, right? And opposite of Sagittarius is Gemini. That means that Jupiter in Gemini is in exile, right? Sometimes people call it in detriment, right? I like the word exile because that sounds less nasty. Because in detriment, that sounds like this is bad, right? It sounds like, oh God, I have this really bad Jupiter placement, or this whole Jupiter in Gemini transit, it's gonna be bad. It's in detriment. Jupiter is like compromised. I don't really see it that way. I mean, there can be a little bit of that element going on, right? Jupiter's a little bit kind of like, what is this? This is a little weird, right? It's not like my home energy of Sagittarius. It's not fiery. It's not huge. It's not expansive. But I like saying that Jupiter is in exile because, well, is being in exile really that bad, right? Like if you've ever been an expat, like I'm an expat, right? If you've ever moved and lived in a country that is not your home country, you're kind of like in exile, right? You've gone somewhere new, and that can be a good thing, right? There's tough things about it. There's weirdness about it. You always kind of feel like an alien. You always kind of feel a little bit out of place, and yet you can thrive in a place that is not your home, right? You can thrive in a place that is not your home. Sorry, I was interrupted by my cat coming along and, knocking over the tripod and all that. So I'm armed with treats. If I throw treats, it'll distract him long enough so that I can record this video, right? Because he comes and how do you get anything done with cats? It's impossible sometimes. So talking about Jupiter in exile in Gemini. So how can this actually be a good thing? Yes, there's some discomfort, some weirdness, right? Some limitation. Jupiter can kind of feel limited in Gemini a little bit, but I want to talk about how this is bringing the Jupiter energy, right? That big, expansive, that higher spirituality, that sense of explosiveness, that fieriness, and that desire to like travel big distances, right? When we're talking Sag and Jupiter, there's always a little bit about like foreign countries and foreign lands and that kind of big thing, but it's also higher spirituality and higher learning, a lot going on with it, right? And like money, right? Never forget that Jupiter is a money planet, right? Never forget that Jupiter is a money planet. All of that stuff is coming down into Gemini, and Gemini, there's so much going on with Gemini. That's a huge long conversation, right? Yes, there's this element of it being the twins, the two souls, right? It is also the human mind, the human intelligence. It is the kind of local scene, right? The local scene, your immediate human environment. I always think of Gemini as, well, all of these things, right? But when we're talking about a planet like Jupiter being in Gemini, it's bringing down this higher expansive knowledge, this higher expansive wisdom, and things like money and abundance, bringing that down into the human scene, right? Into the human consciousness. So what I really feel about Gemini is that it represents, at least partially and at least on one level, the human mind, the human consciousness, the human experience. And that whole thing about Gemini being the two souls, the two masks, right? The two sides, the two faces. Well, that's what humans are like, right? We have two halves of our brain that are quite different. Humans are like that, right? Humans have these two aspects to our consciousness. We are this duality, right? We have this duality inherent inside of us. So it is all of this rolled up together. So Jupiter in Gemini brings all of that higher expansive stuff down into the human mind, down into the human scene. So I think that sounds pretty good, right? I think that sounds pretty damn good. So this is actually can you see how that kind of like clicks things together, right? It clicks things together. It's bringing opposites together. And that is a really compounded theme here, because you already have the Gemini theme of the two faces, the two masks, the two souls, right? Blending together, that the duality of Gemini. And then when you have Jupiter coming from the opposite sign of Sagittarius down into Gemini, now we have that same theme being compounded, okay? The harmonization of opposite elements, the harmonization of duality. You kind of, I know this is getting kind of like off into the weeds and kind of weird, but that's really how I see this, right? So there's this huge potential here. If you have Jupiter in Gemini, or if you have Jupiter in the third house, or if you're just here because Jupiter's moving into Gemini and you're kind of curious about that, think about how that higher energy, that higher spiritual energy, that higher transcendent kind of fiery consciousness is coming down into the human mind, down into the human experience. So I would say for Jupiter and Gemini natives, or if you got your Jupiter in the third house, how do you access your self-expansion and your abundance? Because and like your higher spirituality and your higher learning, because that is a big part of your personal Jupiter placement. And I would say that in order to find your abundance, right? In order to find your abundance, there's going to be a certain amount of melding this with the human environment, right? With the human environment, with communication, okay? Because when we're looking at a natal Jupiter placement, there's always going to be something about communication, communicating with your mind, communicating verbally, communicating with your words. This could be a really good placement, honestly, guys, for writers, right? This could be really, really good for writers, or somebody working in PR, in marketing, in social media, right? Anything where you are communicating and connecting with people, right? The human scene. Normally I would say that with Gemini, it's going to be a more local situation, right? Where you might be communicating with kind of your peers or your local community, right? Because there is this kind of localness. It's a good thing for kind of like hometown travel, right? Being the hometown tourist, that kind of thing. But with Jupiter and Gemini, you can kind of take that local feel, take that peer-to-peer, that sibling type of feel, and blend that together with big expansion. So honestly, this could like be pretty explosive for social media, right? Because that is that peer-to-peer thing, but it's all over the entire globe. This is really the energy of the global village. There is definitely something here of like grassroots campaigns, right? You got to think whenever we have a transit through Gemini, like a significant transit through Gemini, think back, guys, think back to the summer of 2020, the Northern Hemisphere summer of 2020, right? When the North Node moved into Gemini, right? It had been in Cancer during the initial COVID lockdowns and all of that, right? But then when it moved into Gemini, the North Node moved into Gemini. Sorry, I interrupted again. I had to turn my air conditioner off because that was way too loud. This is like, this scatteredness, okay? This kind of scatteredness and the interruptions and the multitasking, that's part of this as well, because Gemini can be very much like that. And when you have Jupiter in here, well, now you're just like fanning the flames and everything can be a bit much. It can be a bit scattered. It can be a bit all over the place. That's just part of the energy. So as I was saying, in 2020, when the North Node moved into Gemini, what happened, right? What was going on the kind of public discourse once everybody kind of got over the COVID lockdowns and all of that? Then we shifted into a lot of political, kind of grassroots political stuff, right? I don't want to get into it, but you guys can like remember how the public discourse, the public consciousness shifted from being, really worried about being locked at home with like the threat of COVID, and to then everything shifted into much more like social political kind of conversations and all that kind of grassroots movements and all of that kind of stuff. That was the North Node transiting through Gemini. So it's not the exact same thing with Jupiter in Gemini, but that's what kind of stuff comes up when Gemini is highlighted, right? When Gemini is involved. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, over the next year as we have Jupiter in Gemini, if that kind of stuff or just that kind of vibe comes back around, where it's all about empowering the people, right? Like the normal people, the actual people, right? It's trying to return power to the people, trying to empower the people, through wisdom, right? Through spirituality, through money, through abundance, through expansiveness, right? Bringing empowerment and expansiveness and abundance to people, right? That's what I want to say. I want to say people, not the people, because I feel like that's like, there's connotations there. It's just people, right? It's just us, humans, people. So there's definitely an element there. There can be this kind of grassroots movements going on with Jupiter and Gemini. What else do I want to talk about here? Okay, so what I really want to talk about is spirituality, because those of you who know me, especially those of you who watch my other channel, right, Evermind Oracle, my tarot reading channel, where I do much, much, much more like fringe spiritual stuff, really off the deep end spirituality for starseeds and light workers, right? If you know me from over there, that's what I'm really all about, right? That's what really does it for me. So Jupiter brings spiritual expansion. Gemini is about the human mind. This has big potential to bring expansive spirituality to the human experience, right? To really ground your spirituality in the human experience. Because so sometimes your spiritual journey, your spirituality, your spiritual experiences, it can be very like out of your body. It can be very out there. It can be very much about leaving behind Earth, leaving behind your human experience, and it can kind of get really divorced from your human self. And you can even start to feel like spiritual self and human self are two separate things, right? That have nothing to do with each other. And it's like your human self can feel small and like something you want to leave behind, right? That can be a little bit of a side effect of your kind of spiritual experience sometimes, right? But Jupiter in Gemini, I think, is very healing to this, and it reminds us that our human experience, that our local experience, that our experience of being a human is one of the most spiritual experiences we could be having, right? And to have normal, everyday, even mundane human experiences, getting up, checking your texts, right? Texting your family, walking down the street to get a coffee from the coffee shop, and just having like your normal, everyday, localized human experiences, that there's almost like a profound mysticism to that. And to really find the spiritual in the micro. If Sagittarius is macro, then Gemini would be micro, right? And the Jupiter in Gemini, blending that together and kind of understanding that the human experience is no less spiritual than any crazy interdimensional cosmic experience you could be having, right? It's really, this is it. This is why we're here. This is what it's about. And finding the spirituality in micro, right? Finding the spirituality in micro. I'm actually flipping back in my mind to the last time Jupiter was in Gemini, and I was going clubbing a lot, and that was really fun. I was going to like psytrance clubs, right? I didn't go to like normal people clubs. I went to like alternative, subculture like type of scene clubs, right? Lots of psytrance clubs, some goth clubs, stuff like that. And I had a lot of fun. And that wasn't something that I normally did, but it was like a new way of like connecting to really like vibrant, really human subcultures. And I got to go out and I got to have nightlife experiences, and I got to go dancing and stuff like that. And it was really, really fun. And, that was like, almost feels like another lifetime ago now, but I had a lot of fun doing that. And I'm realizing that was my way of finding transcendent experiences in the human world, right? Transcendent experiences in the human world. Like, have you ever been to a rave, right? I mean, I know. I'm not saying that like everybody's having super spiritual experiences at a rave or something like that, right? But it's there for the finding, right? It's there for the finding. Even if you're just in a club, you got the lights, the lights are all disco, neon, and there's a black light, and everybody's dancing, and lots of people are doing drugs, right? But they're like expanding their minds and stuff like that. there is something really deeply spiritual to be found in those type of experiences. And this actually brings me into something that isn't always talked about with Gemini, right? That Gemini can be kind of gritty. It can be kind of about the gritty human experience, right? The gritty human experience, the grittiness of it. Some people might even call it the dirtiness of it. Like, think about, like, I don't know about you guys, but I really like walking down a city street. Like, you know, I'm from Vancouver, so, you know, the streets of Vancouver. Sometimes they're kind of dirty. Sometimes there's a lot of grittiness. There's a lot of homelessness, and there's a lot of, you know, really real life, right? Real life going on, okay? Real life, real gritty, real human life. But I like to walk the streets of a city and like catch the vibe. There's so much vibe in a city street. Something that you don't find in the suburbs, right? You don't find it in the suburbs. You don't find it in a small town. But walking down and catching the vibe of it, like a really like interesting urban area. And I don't mean like an uptown area. I don't mean like a you know, an area in a city where there's lots of money. I mean like the real, right? The real urban streets of a city, and just like catching the vibe. There's a vibe to be caught there, and you can really enjoy it and kind of get something out of that, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not wealthy, even if it's not ideal. There's still like, this is real human life going on right here, right? And it's just, you just kind of take it all as it is, and you can just kind of take it in and enjoy it for what it is, just for what it is, right? Including all of the dirtiness, the grittiness, the like even the poverty sometimes, and you just go, this is what it is, right? There is this ability of Gemini to just go, this is real, this is human, this is what it is, and I can kind of just vibe with it anyway, right? And if you have a lot of Sagittarius placements and no Gemini placements, that could be a struggle for you, right? I know like a lot of the time when people Gemini North Node, they can really struggle with this. They can want to keep themselves out of that kind of scene. They can kind of want to keep themselves out of real human life, right? But of course, with the Gemini North Node, you go on that whole journey of learning to encounter that, right? So that can be really challenging for some people. But I got a Gemini Moon, and I really like to catch the vibe of real human life, like no matter what that is, just to experience human life for what it is. And sometimes the lower frequencies of Sagittarius can be a little bit ivory tower, right? A little bit above it all. And then I would say the counter to that is Gemini being the cure to naivete, right? The cure to naivete. So Jupiter in Gemini can really bring you down to earth on this and allow you to really experience and vibe with what is real, what is right in front of you, and you to actually connect that with transcendent spirituality. So I could go on about this forever because I really like Gemini and I really like Jupiter, and I think this is really good. But this video has been kind of all over the place. So those are my impressions on this, guys. That's what's coming up. That's what I'm thinking about. Just tossing out some vibes for you to vibe with, right? This isn't the whole story. This isn't what it is for everybody, but these are some of the vibes that come up when I open my mouth here. So I'm gonna leave you with that. Of course, sign up for my subscription service, right? $8 a month, the accelerated evolution container, full moon videos, new moon videos, 2 videos a month. Really, really cool. Love doing it. I've also got another channel. I have an Etsy shop and a website where you can shop for private readings, right? I do tarot readings and some astro readings, and I got a newsletter, all kinds of links down below. So check me out. See you guys later. Bye.